What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk about how you can make your drums absolutely slap in Ableton. So if you're ready, let's jump right into it. Okay, so making your drum slaps really only comes down to a couple core principles. The first one being starting with high quality, good samples. This is the most important one because if you start off with crappy samples or you don't have the right samples that you're using for your drums, you're really not going to be able to get too far with them. All right, I say this all the time, but you can shine a turd, but it's still a piece of shit at the end of the day. All right, so as long as you're starting with good quality samples, you're going to get to a certain level. If you aren't, you're not going to get there, and you're never going to be able to get up to the slappiness that you want it to, or it's just not going to sound right. It's not going to sound great. So the first thing is obviously start with samples that are very high quality. So in our example, I'm going to go ahead and make some simple drums on this beat that we got going right here. I'm going to be using my drum kit, which is called Toxic Wasteland here. All of the samples in it are high quality. You really don't even need to do much to them. They're pretty much ready to go right out of the box. If you guys are interested in that, there's going to be a link for it in the description below. You can go and check it out there. It's actually pretty cheap in comparison to other drum kits out there. So you can grab that bad boy and you'll have a bunch of really good samples to start with. Okay, so we're going to start building out all of these drums, but I want to talk about the next point really quick because it's going to play into what we're doing right now, and that is leaving gaps and spaces for different drums in the mix. You don't want everything playing at the same time. You don't want your snare playing at the same time as your kick. You don't want perks playing on the same notes as your open hi-hats or your snares. You want to kind of separate everything out so it has its own space to shine. Obviously the hi-hats are consistently playing, so things are going to be playing on top of them, and that's completely fine. The hi-hat's good to go, and so is the 808 at the same point. But everything else you should try to space out and leave room for it in the mix. Also, another thing that you can do to make your 808 slap even harder is leave little gaps in your 808 so that the notes aren't playing consistently all the way through. You want to give your notes a little bit of breathe time before the next one comes in, and it hits twice as hard when it comes in. So let's start building some quick, easy drums on this. All right, so let's pick out a couple sounds from the drum kit to use here. Let's use the off-white clap. Thinking for the snare, we're not going to layer the snare with this one. I think we're just going to use the clap. So let's go ahead and pick, let's pick the serpent snare here. We're going to do some off-centered snares, some cool little rolls with it maybe or something like that. For the hi-hats, let's grab the high AF one. And we may change that depending on if it sounds great or not with the rest of the mix. And then let's grab an open hi-hat as well. I actually like the big time one, so let's continue with that. We may change that one up as well, all depending. For the 808, we're definitely going to use this 6-7 808 out of the kit here. This is like my boosted little spins, my little boosted take on a spins 808. And the kick right here, let's go into the kick folder. Let's use the KO kick. And then we can start going ahead and building out some of these patterns. So first let's start with the clap because that's super easy to do. All right, let's build those off snares that we talked about earlier. I don't know if we're gonna do any rolls, but we're gonna play a couple off center of the clap there. Yeah, we'll just keep it really simple for this. All right, let's get a basic little hi-hat pattern in here. We're going to start with the two-step. We might add some rolls as well, so let's go ahead and get that going. So super simple hi-hat pattern just like that will be perfectly fine. Can add in an open hi-hat now. Okay, so now you're starting to see why good samples automatically get your beat to a certain point, right? We haven't even started mixing or doing anything else like that, and it's already banging. But just wait, let's put this 808 in here now and start getting that going. Okay, so super simple 808 pattern. And this is an example of leaving breaks before other 808s come in. Now this is a super crazy drastic example. I don't always do my 808s like this. Every once in a while I do them like this when the beat's like super dark and hard, because it can be really awesome to do it like this. But you can notice that there's a lot of gap in between each of these 808 notes. Now if you had something like this, and then maybe you had the 808 come in again right here, and then maybe it came in again like here and here, that might work and be okay, but you can see that there's a long like note right here. So that longer note is giving it time to bleed out before the next note comes in, instead of just having it be like this. I'll show you an example where it would be like a little bit too much, as if maybe you did something like this. Let's see, let me take it out of triplet grid. So if you did something like this, and you kept going on with this sort of a pattern, just listen to it and see how the 808 doesn't have any room to breathe there. So just imagine it like keeping on going like that. Obviously this can work in certain circumstances, like for battle beats and things like that. It can work in some circumstances, but it's always good to give the 808 room, at least in parts of the pattern, right? It doesn't always have to have room in between every single note. You can have groups of notes together and it works fine, but leaving some space here and there, allowing the 808 to kind of take a rest, and then allowing it to come back in at certain points, not every point, but certain points, can be super beneficial to you. So I came up with this quick little pattern right here, and this is what it's sounding like right now. All right, let's get a quick kick in here as well. We're pretty much just going to copy the same notes as the 808 for the kick here. We're just going to drop these ones down. I'm going to get rid of these really fast notes right here. And that's pretty much all we're going to do for the kick. So you can see that this is already smacking and we haven't even finished it out. We literally just set it down and I kind of adjusted some of the levels a little bit already. It's already smacking, already punching. We haven't even done any mixing. So let's move on to the next part. Okay, so the next part is making sure that your drum samples are in key. Making sure that your 808 is playing on the same notes as your melodies are playing. If you have a bass in your melody, some sort of a bass that's playing in the back of your melody, it should probably match the bass, at least where the notes are lining up when the bass notes are lined up. Otherwise, if you're not using like a bass, maybe you're using a piano or something like that, match up the bass notes of that to these bass notes so that you're playing the right notes and it's matching your melody and everything's in sync. Another thing is for any of your other samples, let's say your clap, snare, and hi-hat, open hi-hat, usually everybody puts it on the C, right? Usually everybody just puts it straight on the C and says it's good to go. Well, make sure that C is available in your range. Make sure it's available in your scale. You can see I have my scale turned on here and C is in my scale, so we're good to go here. But in certain scales, like let's change it to D sharp, you can see that C is not in this scale. So we would actually, if this was the scale that we were using, we'd want to move everything up one or everything down one in that circumstance instead of using C, because it might sound a little off or a little bit weird. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Okay, the next thing we're going to look at is some basic EQing. We don't got to go crazy with these samples since they're already pretty much good to go right out of the box, but I'll show you just some quick things that you can do for them. So let's take the clap first. We'll solo the clap and we're just going to go ahead and take some of the lows out, maybe boost it in some areas. We're going to do that for all of these samples now really quick. So let's go to the snare next. Okay, onto the hi-hats. I'm not even going to boost anything for the hi-hats, those sound good. And let's move on to the open hi-hat as well. Sounds good. So we're mostly just chopping the lows out of everything, boosting some of them where we want to boost them, and we're good to go there. Next for the kick in 808. All I'm going to do for the kick really is go ahead and we're going to take out some of the boxiness, which happens to be in like the 400 to 600 hertz range. You're just going to have to get used to what it sounds like with your ears and then know where to chop it out from there. Sounds like it's right there to me. So I'm just going to go ahead and, whoops, I'm gonna go ahead and just drop this out just a little bit here. I'm gonna use another EQ to just boost a couple things in the kick here. I just happen to like this EQ. Let's boost it like right there. And then we'll go ahead and boost the second sub E range in here. And for the 808, I don't do any EQing. Sometimes I put a distortion on there if I want to, but besides that, I don't really do any EQing with that. Now let's go ahead and make sure that the kick and 808 are sounding appropriate together. Okay, and obviously you would have to EQ your melodies if you haven't done that already. Pretty much just chopping out the lows, and then you can add spots where you might want to boost what the sound sounds like there, kind of like what we did with the other drum samples here. You definitely want to cut the lows out to leave room for the 808 and the kick to shine though. You definitely don't want the lows in your instruments. Okay, so all that's left to do now is the last step, which is leveling everything together. You got to make sure the levels are correct. This is one of the most important steps as well, because the levels in comparison to each other are the whole boat. It's the whole thing, man. So you got to make sure all the levels are correct. So what I usually do is I start with the lead, and then I add in the 808. So I'll add in the 808 next. That sounds good to me, and then I'll add in the kick, and we already got our kick and 808 lined up earlier. So we're good to go with that. Next thing I'll do is add in the clap. I actually noticed that the clap is playing at the same time as one of these 808 notes, so what I did is I just moved it over. It was right here. I just moved it over a couple spaces, so now that's not laying on the same exact note. I just turned down the kick a little bit now. Let's go ahead and add in that snare now. Oh, that sounds good. We'll add in the open hi-hat now. And lastly, we'll do the hi-hat. Alright, so let's listen to this now. We'll go ahead and start it with the intro, and we'll allow the drums to come in and hit, and then you guys can hear just with those couple little minor tweaks that we did, how we were able to make our drums smack through the mix like it was no problem at all. One other quick thing that I want to leave you guys with is if your drums just aren't hitting loud enough, if for some reason your drums, like your 808 isn't hitting loud enough or something, you might need to drop the level of your melodies. You want to make sure that your melodies aren't too loud, so that way your drums can stand above them, right? So if everything is too quiet, if all your drums are too quiet and your melody's nice and loud, go ahead and turn down your melody so that your drums are at the same level and they can hit high, but your melody's a little bit lower. So you got to make sure that everything in comparison to each other is leveled right. So the melody should be lower than everything. Just keep that in mind. Alright guys, so that's going to wrap up the ultra super mega guide on how to get your 808s and the rest of your drums to absolutely slap in Ableton. So if you guys like this one, make sure to smash that like button for me. And subscribe to the channel if you're new here, because we're uploading videos every freaking day just about that you're not going to want to miss out on. And besides that, I'll be catching you guys again in the next one. Peace out.